All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. And we are in episode 14, and I'm just elated. I'm so glad that you decided to come back to get some more information about good leadership and how to be a good leader. So, on last week, we talked about a lot of things as it pertains to outlets and as it pertains to frustrations and how your employees or your volunteers, your parishioners will exhibit certain behaviors based on the culture of your company. So, when I left off last week, I was talking about servant leadership. So I kind of want to get back into servant leadership because I don't want people to get the ideology that I don't like it. I just feel like servant leadership has to be combined with something else to be really effective in your organization. So with servant leadership, the purpose of servant leadership is to enrich the lives of others, to build better organizations, and to ultimately create a world that is more caring and equitable. Not only is it personally rewarding, but it also makes a difference in others' lives. Now, all that sounds like flowers and unicorns, and that's great. You want that as well. But on the other side, you want to make sure that the leader themselves understands the art of leadership and understands their specific leadership style so that they can be more effective in leading their flock or leading their organization. So when we think about servant leadership, the name kind of implies the abridged version, which is that the leader is a servant first and that they are to lead second. This is kind of where I veer off because you should be a leader first and understand the dynamics of being a servant as well. I don't feel like the two are mutually exclusive. So the ideology that a leader understands how to serve his parishioners, serve his organization, serve the people in his organization is just as equally as important as the leader understanding how to lead the organization, how to make sure they're successful, and to make sure they're equipped and empowered to achieve the objectives of your organization. So in order to do that, you want to think about things like helping your parishioners find their inner strengths. When it comes to leadership, it's always better to have individualized leadership, meaning you understand the people that are in your organization. A lot of times when I see organizations that are not doing well, it's typically because the leader is doing what I call blanket leadership, meaning it's just kind of general leadership. It's not catered to the people that are in their organization. It's kind of one size fits all management, which does not work. If you want to be an effective leader, the more effective leaders are the ones that understand the people that are in their organizations and understand the direct needs of each individual. Now, I understand that this is very hard if you have an organization that is really big, but this is why leaders have to empower and delegate the managers that are under them to make sure that their objectives and goals are being achieved not only by them, but the leaders that they charge to get the job done. So you definitely want to make sure that when you are interacting with your people, that you help them find their inner strength. What is that thing that they really want to do? Where is their passion? What is their end game? I always ask the people that are in my organization, what is your end game? Because if I can understand where you want to go, we can devise a plan to get you there. So you definitely want to understand those kinds of things and think about that, helping them find their voice, making sure they development in certain areas, and make sure that they're being their authentic self, that they're not coming to work kind of just doing things just to do them, or they're not there just because it looks good on their resume, or for organizations that they're not there just to get a paycheck. Because remember, all these individuals will make up the culture of your organization. And if the culture is such that people just come to get a paycheck or people just coming to enhance their resumes, the customer service is going to be a direct result of that. So you definitely want to make sure that if you're helping people find their inner strengths and you're helping them achieve the goals that they have set when you interview them, which is very important, then they'll be their best selves and they'll be their most authentic self, which at the end of the day helps you create a culture that is viable for great results and help your organization grow ultimately. All right. Secondly, you want to make sure that they have compassion. Now, because we're talking about ministries and churches, of course, this is one of the more important ones. In a regular nonprofit, this is important as well, because a lot of times the people that you're servicing are in bad socioeconomic areas of their lives. So you're dealing with people who are homeless. You're dealing with people who've been placed. So you're dealing with people who are misplaced. So having compassion and in essence, understanding or trying to put yourself in their shoes will help your organization deliver your programs and services a lot better than having a bunch of, we'll say, high-minded people who don't really care and, again, are there for just paychecks and there just to make their resumes look good. So you definitely want to make sure that you have the compassion, that you're expressing an interest and a concern to build credibility for your organization in your community. Because the best thing you can do, word of mouth is the best marketing you can have for your organization. The fact that people can use your programs and your services and that when they're done, their lives have been enhanced as a result, These are the best things you can do for your organization. This only comes from a very good, strong culture that cultivates people being their authentic self and cultivates people having compassion to understand the people that they're servicing. So you definitely want to keep all that in mind. Next, practice active listening. I cannot stress this enough. Most of the time we talk at people and not talk to people. That's a problem, because what happens is people feel like you're not listening to them, you're not taking consideration what their needs are, and this goes on both sides. So this is not just for the people that work within your organization, this is also for the people that service your organization. So you want to keep all that in mind. Okay, so when we left off, I was finishing up compassion and the ideology that you should try to put yourself in the shoes of the people that you service with your programs and your services. The next one kind of ties into compassion, which is practice active listening, which goes hand in hand with compassion. If you put yourself in the shoes of other individuals, and let's say that you work for, because we use a nonprofit, let's say that your nonprofit services underprivileged kids, and you're constantly seeing kids and parents come in who are displaced, or in a nomadic state, meaning they're kind of going from place to place to try to find a place to lay their head. If you're actually in tune with the conversation that you're having with them and trying to understand where they are in life, then proactive listening kicks in. Or the ideology that you're actively listening to what they have to say and not listening from a judgment point and kind of having this why are you here ideology, but more of a how can we get you to a better place ideology. And that's a form of active listening. The ideology that you're no longer judging or no longer going in with preconceived notions that you know what somebody's going through or that you know who they are, where they've been, but going in saying, you know, this could be me, especially for those of you guys that have ministries or churches or organizations that deal with nonprofits. This could be me and or any number of my family members or friends or associates. So I want to be in tune with what they're going through and try to understand what they're going through, because in doing that, I get a better idea or a better concept of how I can service them or meet their needs. Because again, the objective of a nonprofit, which includes churches, is to meet the needs of the people. Whether you be the pastor, whether you be the usher board leader, whether you be the praise and worship leader, everybody has a part to play in making sure that the organization as a whole is meeting the needs of the people. So you want to make sure that you develop active listening and the ideology that what people are actually saying to you is what you're hearing versus having selective hearing, which I fuss at the people in my organization about all the time. When you have selective hearing, it doesn't matter what somebody's saying, you already feel like you know what they're saying. So you're actually not listening to them, you're picking and choosing what you want to hear so that you can rebut or refute what they have to say. It's almost like having the argumentative mindset that I already know what you're going to say and I already know you're wrong. So it doesn't matter what you're saying to me. I'm pulling out certain things to make you feel like I'm listening to you, but I'm really not, because I'm already in my head. I'm already ready to refute what you just said. So we want to make sure that we're not doing that. And by using active listening, you're hearing what people are saying to you and not hearing what you think they should be saying to you or what you feel they're going to say to you, because there's a big difference. All right. Next, you want to collaborate. And all these principles work for the leader as well as the followers. So when we say collaborate, as a leader, you want to make sure that you're collaborating with your team to not only achieve the objectives that are set on the table by your organization, but to achieve their personal objectives. You know, again, find out what their end game is. If you have a nonprofit that services kids, maybe their end game is to open a daycare, an underprivileged daycare, or maybe their end game is to create a program for underprivileged kids in sports. So if you find out what their end game is, you can collaborate, and collectively you guys can come up with a game plan to not only achieve the organization's objectives, but to achieve the individual's objectives as well. So collaboration is really important. Also, creating relationships with third parties. Even churches. I've used the example in past episodes about one of the men's ministry wanting to have one of the local hospitals come in and do prostate screenings for detecting cancer. That's a third party relationship. That's a collaboration effort. So you want to keep those things in mind. Understand the needs of your organization, understand what you're trying to achieve, and then find ways to collaborate. Because when you collaborate, you partner up with resources, you establish, you build, you create long-lasting relationships, and I can assure you those relationships will come in very handy as you move forward. Because remember, one hand washes the other. So if I'm in a ministry and my ministry serves women and the ministry down the street serves men and we collaborate together, we can meet the needs of men and women in our communities. So collaboration is very important and comes in very handy. So you definitely want to make sure that you keep that in mind as you work with people, whether they be third party or whether they be people within your organization. Next, be inquisitive. I think this is one of the parts that leaders typically fail on. It's okay to take an active interest in your employees or in the people in your organization. Most of the time, the companies that do well are the companies that have become inquisitive about the desires and the needs of the people within their organization. You know, there's nothing better than the pastor who walks through the Sunday school class and shakes hands. There's nothing better than the deacon who comes in the room when the trustees are counting money to kind of lend a hand. These are the kinds of things that you want to think about. Be inquisitive. Learn about the other parts of the organization. Nobody should be cooped up in one part of your organization, because what if somebody's out one day? So if you take the time to be inquisitive and to learn the inner workings of an organization, plus that's the best way to move up in the organization. If I know how to do Sally's job and how to do Mike's job in their absence, and that's my desire, I may get the opportunity to show what I can do. So be inquisitive. And for leaders, take an active interest in your employees or in the people in your organization, because in doing so, they feel important, they feel empowered, they feel like they want to come to work because they matter. And oftentimes that's where we fail as leaders. We don't take an active interest in our employees or in our volunteers, so they don't feel needed. They don't feel like they matter. They don't feel like they're contributing. So I would advise leaders to be inquisitive about your employees. Find out what they like. Find out what's going on in their lives. I'm not saying you have to sit down and go out and have drinks, but you can take an active interest in what they do. Walk the floor sometimes, sit in on their meetings, just show your face and show them that they do matter and that they are important to the organization, because in doing so, they will become their best self, and them becoming their best self makes the organization great. So you want to keep all that in mind. Okay, so we have the Nonprofit Summit, which will be taking place in Marietta, Georgia on May 31st through June the 2nd. On June 1st is the actual summit itself, and at the summit we're going to have 4 great speakers and 4 great panels. The speakers will be talking about everything from international leadership to grant writing to how to write a book the proper way and put your life in an actual book that people will want to read. And other one will be females who are in business association, and why you should join a business association. I'm a facilitator, so I'm Ricardo Rice, and I host the Leadership Blend TV show as well as the radio show, where we look at leadership in all its different avenues and all its different venues. So I decided I wanted to do this summit because I want to be able to really get into the areas we need to improve on in leadership, things that we need to know. How to write a grant for those people who have ministries and want to have community centers and after-school programs. How to write a book the proper way, which Coach AJ, she calls herself Coach AJ, Audrika Austin is going to be talking about that. Angela talks about she was the president of the Marietta Business Association last year, so her outlook is how women operate in business associations and what's the benefits of joining your local business association or your local chamber of commerce. Like I said, I'll be talking about grant writing. It's like a dissertation, but I plan on simplifying it. And then our panels range from the glass ceiling, where Dr. Henson and Dr. Wheat will be talking, along with Tamika Milburn, who owns a professional women's basketball league. We talk to millennial women. Ashley Dash is a career branding expert. She's on that panel. LaShawn Drayer's on that panel. She does women networking events. We have another panel that talks about changing your community through politics, where we have some young ladies, I say young, we have some women who have run for office. Dr. Latasha Holden is on that panel. Rachel Kinsey's on that panel. And one of my correspondents on my leadership radio show, Simone Price, is on that panel as well, and she works with nonprofits and lobbying and all that good stuff. And then we have another more basic one that hits right at home. So we have one that talks about health and fitness with Wantisa Hughes, and then we talk about skin and hair care with Dr. Nikki Hill. So as you can see, it's going to be a plethora of information. It's going to be a plethora of panelists and speakers, and it's going to be a great event. And again, it's on June the 1st. You want to head over to ricecommunity.com. That's Rice with a W, and get your tickets. Tickets are $25, and that includes foods and swag bags, which we're going to be giving away. So it's going to be a great event that you don't want to miss. Great information, a great time, and I look to see you there. Okay, so we talked about being inquisitive for leaders to actually take an active interest in the desires and end games of their parishioners or other people in their organization. All right, so next is a concept that is kind of becoming more of a thing in the workplace or in your cultures, and that's mentorship, coaching, and development. Leaders should always be doing these things anyway, but what I'm finding is a lot of companies have recognized that it's a good thing to pair up a older employee or a more mature employee or somebody with some seniority with maybe a freshman or a newer employee that comes into the organization, because it'll help the new employee become acclimated to the environment. It'll help them feel like they're part of the family, things of that magnitude. But as a leader, this should be at the forefront of your ideology anyway, that you want to coach and help your employees to develop to be the best authentic selves they can be, because again, as a result of it, your organization will become better as a result of you developing that talent. The biggest thing I always tell leaders is that talent by itself is great, but until you teach an individual how to maximize the talent that they possess, it's just that. And no organization can thrive with a bunch of individuals who have talent that they don't know how to maximize or tap into. So by creating mentorship programs within your organization, and yes, this does adhere to churches as well, because it's always good to have senior pastors and youth pastors and all these good things be paired with people who are up and coming in the ministries, especially if you have a big organization, because I've seen this a lot. Big organizations have bishops and apostles, and they take a pastor under their wings and teach them, how to be a good leader, how to be a good pastor, things of that magnitude. So you definitely want to keep in mind about mentorship programs, coaching programs, teaching individuals, things like personal finance. That is a very big one, especially in nonprofit organizations. I cannot stress this enough, that understanding how to operate within your own personal finances can make a world of difference. There is nothing worse than having a leader who cannot balance a checkbook, or having a leader whose account is always in the negative. Now, I understand we go through hard times, but it's all about management and personal finance management. So that's always a good thing to have as well. Also, to develop the talent that individuals have. Again, find out what the end game of your parishioners is. If somebody in your ministry desires to be in finance and they're in college for it, put them to work. Pair them up with a trustee who they can actually see the money being counted and see how you do a personal balance sheet or an organizational balance sheet. What is an expenditure? All that good stuff. So it's always good to develop and coach and mentor and create these kinds of programs. All right, lastly, stay agile. Always be open to new opportunities. Again, these are a lot of things that I see that go sideways in an organization. Feedback is always a good thing. Even in a church, yes, I'm saying that. Even in a ministry, it's always good to solicit feedback from the people that go to your church. Are they enjoying the 8 a.m. service? Should you change the 8 a.m. service? Do they need a 12:30 service? These are the kinds of things you want to get feedback on. How are the ushers treating them? Did they feel the love when they walk through the door? Because remember, compassion is a part as well, particularly in churches or ministries. These are the kind of things you want to solicit. I remember I went to visit a church and I walked through the door and the usher walked right by me and never sat me. That was a problem for me. I didn't feel the love in the environment or in the culture of the ministry. If somebody had asked me when I was done, how was my visit, I would have said, the ushers weren't exactly all that inviting, all that welcoming, and that could be something they could take and have a meeting with the usher board and say, hey, you guys are the first line of defense when people come into the ministry. I know mother over there might be having a bad day. She might have gotten a foot or something. I'm not sure, but we want to make sure that we're mindful of those things, that when people come into the church, that they're looking for that love and compassion that they may not be getting on a day-to-day basis. So again, you want to keep all these things in mind. So a quick recap: help your employees find their inner strength or their inner voices. What is their self-awareness? Help them get to their self-awareness. Work inside of them. Help them be healthy and happy in life. Have compassion. keeping in mind that the people that you're talking to, that you're offering your programs and services to, are probably in detrimental need of those programs and services. And oftentimes you don't know their story, you don't know where they've been, and you don't know what got them to the situation. So you want to be mindful when you're having the conversations about what you can offer, that you try to put yourself in their shoes so that the conversation will be good and not just one-sided. Practice active listening. Again, let's not have selective listening when you listen only to refute or to rebut. In other words, looking to argue because you feel like you know what they're going to say. Practice active listening, hearing what somebody's actually saying to you so you can decipher what they actually need to be successful or be their best authentic self. Collaborations. Always remember to build relationships, interpersonal and external, with people that are in your community or with people who come to your organization. Be inquisitive, especially for leaders. Take an active interest in the people in your organization. What is their end game? What do they want to do? Who are they? Why did they come to your organization? There are thousands of organizations that people can go to. What made them walk through your door? Sit down with them. Have those conversations. If it's a nonprofit and it's a volunteer, find out what made them want to volunteer specifically with your organization. Because if you do that, it gives you a better idea of how to meet their needs. And in essence, they'll meet your needs or your organizational needs and help your organization be great. Create mentorships, coaching, and development programs to make sure that the people in your organization are maximizing their potential. Nothing worse, again, than having 50,000 people and nobody know why they're in your organization, nobody understands who they are, and if they don't know those basic things, they'll never be a great asset to your organization. So create some mentorship programs, pairing them up with senior leaders or pairing them up with people who are seniors in the area they want to go into. Coaching, leaders should be coaching anyway. And that's what you do. Leaders should coach, help them find their way, sit down with them, do the assessment with them, all those good things. And lastly, stay agile. Nobody should get to a point where you don't want to listen to what anybody has to say as it pertains to taking the organization to the next level. And I'm pointing out baby boomers because they are kind of bad about that. They're kind of older and set in their ways. The likelihood of them wanting to change is not very high. So that's where Generation X and Y come in to kind of help move them along to probably what the millennials are saying. See how I paint that picture? Generations make a difference. So you want to keep all the things in mind. All right, so next I want to tackle a kind of interesting concept, which is called emotional intelligence. And the name kind of implies what it is. Emotional intelligence is more important than one's intelligence in attaining success in their lives and careers. So in essence, it's kind of you being aware of how you feel in the confines of your culture and the confines of your organization, and being aware of where your emotions can lie and where they can kind of go. All right? So there are 5 categories of emotional intelligence. 1, self-awareness, the ideology that you understand and recognize the emotions as things happen. So you kind of know where you're going to go. So if somebody kind of runs up on you or somebody kind of approach you in the wrong way, understanding what your first reaction is going to be can be quite helpful. And I tell people all the time, be mindful in any situation that you're in and be mindful of what your first reaction is going to be because you can counter it. So let's say that you're kind of a high-strung person and somebody in the workplace comes to you on a bad day. Your first instinct may be to swing on them. Well, if you're conscious of that and you stay conscious of it, somebody walks up on you and you're having a bad day, then you're more likely to say, you know what, let me think about this first before I immediately react. Because remember, reacting is an outlet which is caused by frustration, which we just established. You're already having a bad day, which is going to create frustration, and your outlet, if you're not careful, is going to be an altercation, which can result in all kinds of bad things. All right? Self-regulation, understanding how to have control over these experiences and your emotions. Making sure that you understand the number of techniques that you need to calm yourself down or to slow up anxiety or not hit depression. So you want to be able to woosah or be able to walk out of the room and come back into it. These are all kinds of things. Self-control, trustworthiness, maintaining standards of honesty and integrity. Integrity is very important. Let me take a sidebar. Integrity is very important, especially for a nonprofit organization. If you're not paying people to work within your organization, then they should at least be able to trust the words that you say or the words that you use when you're conversing with them. If I say to you, hey, I know I can't pay you, but we're going to be giving out gift certificates in 2 weeks, and 3 weeks pass, and you haven't said anything, the morale in your organization is probably going to go down. So you want to make sure they have trust in what the words that you're saying. Be conscious of your actions, how people view you, how you're viewed in the workplace. Adaptability, be able to accept change. Change is a constant. And I try to explain this to people all the time, even with leadership. Change is constant. So the easier you learn to adapt to change, the easier life will be for you as well as your organization. Because as the leader in your organization, you're probably the face or one of the faces guiding in for your organization. Innovating. Be innovative. Make sure that you are soliciting new ideas, that you're up to date in your areas. If they're rolling out some new program that is something that's needed in your ministry, make sure that you're up abreast on it, that you understand what's going on with it, you understand the benefits of having it in your organization so that you can help your organization grow and be more professional. All right, third, motivation. There are two types of motivation. There's intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic motivation means that it's just internal. Like when you're having a bad day, something kicks in and you're able to just kind of finish it out and get it and make it happen. External motivation means that you need variables around you to kind of get you motivated. People talking in your ear, or people saying, hey, you can do it, or people giving you motivational speeches. External motivation, I try to talk people out of that because it makes you dependent on other individuals. Now, when you're in ministry, it's kind of expected because it's transformational leadership, meaning your words are supposed to transform the lives of individuals. So there is a certain level of dependency when you're talking about ministries. But if you're talking about a nonprofit organization where you don't have time to hold hands and kind of sit down with people and kind of kumbaya, then it becomes vital to teach people how to have intrinsic motivation or that internal motivation that kind of comes up. Now, those individuals who are saved and in God and all those great things, then it tells us that the joy of the Lord is your strength. So you should always be able to pull from that. Those individuals who are actually in a workplace, again, try to get to that place, that good place, where if things are all going downhill, that you can be like, you know what, I remember X, Y, Z, and that motivation just kind of rise up. All right, empathy, the ability to recognize how people feel is important to success in your life and your career. Being mindful and being skillful in discerning how people around you are feeling. Let's say that your coworker is having a bad day and she just doesn't want to talk. You have to be mindful of that so you're not harassing her for the next 2 hours about you need this, you need that, I need this, I need that. Have that level of empathy to say, you know what, I'll cover you today, we're good, I'll take care of it. When we come back to work tomorrow, we'll try it again and we're going to make it happen. All right, lastly, social skills. In a climate where people are not accustomed to having face-to-face interaction, acquiring social skills is very important. I know we have social media, and social media kind of speaks for us, but nothing will ever replace being able to sit face-to-face with someone and having dialogue and a conversation to be able to articulate your needs and desires as to what you need and what your organization may need. So again, emotional intelligence, real quick, self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills.